Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF, and I am here to bring you another weekly IDP preview episode. And that, of course, means that I am joined by another mind from the IDP world. He is co-host of the IDP After Show, content creator for Reality Sports Online. He's also the reason there is a beautiful signed Max Crosby jersey behind me. It's my guy, Jake Kohlhagen. Jake, what's up, brother?
Oh, John, just living the good life here. Excited to work with you again as always. I got my first chance this off season. You know, I let you know, man. I love and respect all your work. So getting to do anything alongside you is always a pleasure. It's a joy. And yeah, I'm just excited to chop it up and talk some ball with you tonight.
Me too, man. Yeah, and the feeling is mutual as well. I'm very glad that we can get you on the show, and I'm glad we got our our schedules to work out the same here to get this going here. I know you do also the IDP preview episode on the IDP show, so you're a busy man. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come on here with me to talk some football. So. Yeah, like you said, it's going to be fun. We got no bye weeks this week, which is interesting on the NFL's part. So we're going to go game by game as usual, and we'll have the timestamps in the episode description again, so you guys can jump around and find the games that you're looking for more easy like. And then we'll cover some of the main storylines for each team with a focus on maybe like our favorite matchups or least favorite matchups for every team as well. And then shout out to Boltar the Pirate in the YouTube comments last week. Ask and you shall receive. We got some brand new matchup based visuals for YouTube as well. So I know we have a lot more audio listeners than we do on YouTube, but feel free to switch on over to the YouTube if you like and check it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe while you're here. We'll get some good visuals up for you guys as well to focus more on some of the matchups for IDP as we go forward through the rest of the season. And I'm also happy to answer start-sit questions, interact with folks in the YouTube comments, again, as long as you're respectful. So please feel free to ask questions, jump in the comments below. Let's win some fantasy matchups. I will include a link to my IDP rankings over on PFF.com, the link to the PFF IDP fantasy report in the episode description as well. And yeah, all the images again that we'll put on here are for the benefit of the YouTube crowd. So feel free, like and subscribe. And then last piece of business before we get into it, I have a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist. And the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, meetfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, buddy, let's get into it and start things off where we always do. Thursday night football. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Buffalo Bills. Jake, kick us off with maybe a matchup or two that you like or don't like in this one.
All right. So the biggest question for me, at least with the Bills linebacker situation and this matchup as a whole, right, is, to Dorian Williams or to Tyrell Dodson. Every week we seemingly have this figured out based on what we saw last week. But yet again here, we see Dorian Williams pulled in favor of Tyrell Dodson. It's not a hyper valuable position necessarily so far for the Bills, that linebacker 2 position. It's definitely very relevant for us in IDP here. But for me on a short week, if you got to pick someone here, I'm really leaning into Tyrell Dodson. The veteran seems to keep getting the nod in favor of the rookie when not playing well. Short week to prepare. You gotta, at least I imagine Tyrell Dodson is going to step in to that LB2 role, at least for this week. And then once we get beyond that, I don't know what to tell you. It's probably one you might want to stay away from until we think we have a little bit more clarity in that situation. So, and for me, I do not like the matchup as much for the Bills pass rushers this week. the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not been an ideal matchup for pass rushers overall. Tryon, Chienka, and Barrett have done a nice job, especially strong volume opportunities presenting for themselves this year. But I just don't. I just don't see that there for them. So, excuse me, I said Bills pass. I'm getting them mixed up here. Bad matchup for the Bills pass rushers. So, I'm talking, Greg Rousseau, Von Miller, who probably is not going to really play much again on a short week. He very limited snaps this last week. So, yeah, I'm probably going to lean away from most of the pass rushers in this matchup overall too. The Buccaneers, Tryon, Chienka, and Barrett. Bills allow a lot of pressures, not a great sack conversion rate overall. So, yeah, I'm kind of staying away from most of the pass rushers in this matchup unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah, I'm with you there for sure. And then, yeah, just coming back to, like you said, the Bills linebacker situation, definitely one that I feel like we can avoid for sure. I have Tyrell Dodson higher, just like you do. I have him as LB 51 though. And Dorian Williams, I did not rank this week. It just, again, we don't want to trust that. It's not like an amazing matchup by any means. Tampa Bay ranks 20th in linebacker tackles yielded to linebackers. So there's already another full-time linebacker out there for Buffalo as well in Terrell Bernard, so he can eat into those opportunities. So yeah, don't love it for the Bills linebackers. I'd rather wait a week instead of trying to force somebody in there. And yeah, Gregory Rousseau specifically, you talked about the Bills pass rushers. He's kind of the one that stands out to me that I'm lower on this week. I have him as edge 26 this week. 68.2 pass rush grade on the year, which is 47th among edge defenders. He's got a 60% snap share, which is good, not great, right? It's nothing amazing. But going against Tampa Bay, who arguably is the worst matchup for opposing pass rushers, Tampa Bay owns the best team pass blocking grade on the year at 78.6. And Baker Mayfield has been incredible at avoiding sacks. He's second behind only Patrick Mahomes in pressure to sack conversion rate at 10.7%. I don't know that Rousseau has really been good enough of a pass rusher this season to feel great about starting him this week. So yeah, I think I'd be benching Rousseau. Only one game all year with a pass rush grade above 70 as well. So he's one to fade, and I'm with you on Shaq Barrett and those guys as well. Yeah, Shaq Barrett, he's interesting. He's had 2 games now with a 90+ pass rush grade, and then everything else is below 65, I believe. So he's kind of all over the place. So don't love the matchup this week. Josh Allen, another one of those guys that has one of the better pressure to sack conversion rates in the league. Anything else from this game? I do like the Tampa Bay linebackers. Any feeling that you have? Well, I like one of the Tampa Bay linebackers. I don't know about the other one, but
go ahead, sir.
No, I was just gonna say the one that I do like, just to clarify that people, I don't want people guessing here which one I like and which one I don't. But if you listened last week, you might be able to guess. But I do like Levante David. I have him as LB 10 this week. Devin White, who has just been the most bland linebacker in the league so far this year. I have his LB 29 this week. So 9.3% tackle efficiency on the year. So that is 53rd among linebackers. The average is 13.2%. He does not look good out there. 47.4 defensive grade, 43.5 run defense grade. Surprisingly, he has a career best missed tackle rate at 5.3%. But it's because he's not even in position to make tackles because he's getting blocked out so often or ending up at the wrong spot that he's not even a factor in this game. So how are you feeling about these Tampa Bay linebackers?
I mean, when you look at Devin White, I mean, he really made his name obviously early on with his pass rush upside. And you look so far this year, I mean, he's only generated 6 pressures and that's he's converted that into 0 sacks so far. So when you're limiting that upside from him, I mean, that's a big issue. And you talked about his grades already across the board, not ideal. His pass rush is one of the lowest of his career so far too, at 46. So if he does not have that upside to really prop him up or even make him just someone where you're comfortable putting him into your lineups because you'll take the booms when you deal with the bus, he's probably someone you're looking at fading almost entirely unless you're getting into really deep leagues or deep formats, LB 3, 4, 5 type range. So yeah, I just saw the Devin beige. I don't know, Devin Off-White. That gets me. I like that.
Yeah, man. He's just not been good this year. Definitely not worth the fantasy hype that he gets in the offseason. I know he's one of the more highly drafted IDPs as well, but it is a good matchup for linebackers. Buffalo yielding the fourth most tackles to the linebacker position per game, but I think I like that a lot more for Levante David than I do for Devin White. So, yeah. Anything else in this game, or do you want to move on to the next one?
We can move on to my Houston Texans if you'd like to.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about the Houston Texans because, yeah, I am interested in the Texans linebacker situation, right? So Denzel Perryman is expected back this week, right? So Hanky Two Toes and Blake Cashman have kind of been balling and holding down the fort here while Perriman has kind of worked back from injury. But I don't know about you. I don't have like a great hold on what this linebacker room is going to look like this week going against the Panthers. So how you feeling about it? Do you have a better grasp here for what to expect from the Texans and their linebackers this week?
Man, I really wish I did. I really do. But I don't, right? And that's one of those things where I like the way that Henry To'o has really kind of, I don't want to say forced himself into the lineup, but it really he's made a name for himself and he's done well to do that. So for me, I'd probably lean To'o just because he's part of this organization, this regime, excuse me, that brought him in the draft. And I really think that D'Amico Ryans likes what he has there. Obviously, it's a lot of coach speak still at this point. I think once we have a full season, we can really understand what he wants to do with this defense in Houston. But for me, if I had to pick one, I'd lean To'o. But Cashman ends up being kind of that nice handcuff stash, as you will, because obviously this linebacker room is highly productive, just like it was in San Francisco when Ryans was there. And you can do that if you have the bench space to do it for sure. And then you're just kind of hedging your bets a little bit as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I got Toto as the highest ranked linebacker for me as well. I think he's LB 28. Denzel Perriman and Cashman. I have those guys a little bit lower just because I would rather kind of wait to see how it plays out this week between the two of them. I like Denzel Perriman a lot. I think he's a really productive tackler, but Blake Cashman also the same thing. But we want one of those guys at least to have a full-time role before we can trust them in most leagues. You might be able to squeak them in deeper leagues, but. Anything else for the Texans to talk about for this one going against the Panthers here?
For me, it'll be interesting to see if Will Anderson can really capitalize on this matchup. To me, I think that the tackles for the Panthers have had their struggles this season, and they've really been a high volume passing team, whether that's game script or that's intentional with the new coaching staff that's there, or maybe a little bit of both. So I'd really like to see Will Anderson deliver a bit more in that regards. I think he's put up some solid numbers so far, especially for a rookie, but I just think it's something where as a fan of the Texans, I'd like to see him establish himself more as that playmaker for this team, with some sort of kind of more regular cadence. I think he's done that with a couple big plays in the backfield and some runs and stuff the last few weeks. Besides obviously their bye week, but I just want to see a little bit more from him. I think this is a good week for him to do it, so I'm excited and I'd definitely be having him in my lineups. But again, maybe a little bit of bias coming through in that regard. So.
No, I'm with you, and it is a decent matchup. Like you said, the Panthers, they are the third best matchup for pass rushers because they have the third worst pass blocking grade as a team this season at 46.9. And Bryce Young, his quarterback pressure to sack conversion rate, it ranks as the 11th worst in the league. So a strong matchup there potentially for Will Anderson to get home. 74.8 pass rush grade on the year, pretty strong for a rookie. I know he's got a lot of high expectations for him as a third round pick, but really good player and still developing. But I think, this, like you said, this is a nice matchup for him to kind of take advantage of here and show out a little bit. So let's talk about the Carolina Panthers quickly here, because it's not like there's a ton going on, as far as IDP relevant guys, but I am interested at least in their linebackers again, like we were with the Texans linebackers. But Frankie Louvu is somebody that I like quite a bit this week, but it is dependent on if he plays. So I have him as LB 15 this week. He might have a hip injury. He's coming off of a bye week. He did leave the team's week 6 game, I believe it was, against Miami. But again, this is a nice matchup for linebackers, seventh best linebacker matchup for as far as tackles go. He's really the lone every down linebacker on this team. So there's opportunity for him to kind of eat up a lot of those opportunities there for tackles. Carolina's also a very zone heavy team, third most zone heavy team in the NFL, which is great for linebacker tackle efficiency. So we love that for sure. I hope he plays, because this is really a great spot for Luvu to put up a ton of tackles this week.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. Luvu, if he's healthy, that's a full go. You need to have him in pretty much every lineup you can. So, yeah, I mean, but like you said, there's not a lot going on for those IDPs. You got big names like Jeremy Chin from, past seasons that have, there was questions coming in and now he's injured. So, and then Xavier Woods and Von Bell are both coming off injuries. And so is it Sam Franklin? Is it going to be a rotation with all these guys? It's a mess, or that I'd probably try to stay away from this week if at all possible. And let's see what, the injury reports tell us throughout the week. And then if we're still confused at the end of that, there's enough matchups this week, right? There's no buys for whatever reason from the NFL. You should be able to find some other options to stream on the back end of that defense.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, especially when we have every single team playing this week. If there's a situation you're iffy on, or you don't trust a ton as far as playing time goes and what a player's role is going to be, you could find a better option. And hopefully we could help highlight some of those better matchups as we go along here as well. So let's go on to the Los Angeles Rams and the Dallas Cowboys. Where do you want to start with this one?
I mean, the biggest name that's really exciting there, and I think everyone was excited about for this year with Wagner's departure, is Ernest Jones. Guy has just been unstoppable this year for IDP, just putting up huge numbers left and right. And I think that was really anticipated, or at least, some level of that. Maybe he's overproduced even in some people's minds. But the real concerning thing is pretty significant snap count dip. And then obviously with that, a production dip this last week. So it seems to be related to his knee injury at this point. So that's what it's got to be. It has to be, right? We all want Ernest Jones to keep being a thing. So otherwise, that's a Christian Roseboom season question.
let's hope not. That's
right. So, but otherwise, Byron Young, Michael Hoyt, I always forget how to say it. One of those two, but I think you highlighted these guys in your waiver wire or your weekly IDP reports. So, but Young's just been a nice revelation for them. No less than 3 pressures per game. 14% pass rush pressure rate on the season. Coming from a guy who I think he was a 4th, 5th round pick. He's just plugged in there at volume. I mean, he's older. I think 25, so an older rookie, but still. Really love to see that production coming through for them early on for this defense that, we really didn't think we'd find a lot of IDP value outside of Ernest Jones.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely a group of misfits over there in the Rams defense among their IDPs, right? But these guys they're doing a decent job this year. And Ernest Jones, obviously, he's kind of the top one there. Aaron Donald, obviously, for sure. But not an amazing matchup. The Dallas is really like a neutral matchup pretty much across the board here. But yeah, Ernest Jones, it does seem to be like due to the knee swelling or whatever was going on there that he's been limited. So I think as long as he's off the injury report, I think by Friday or before game time, which is usually Friday, then I would feel comfortable starting him. But if he continues to be like questionable game time decision type thing going into Sunday, that's probably where you can expect limited snaps again. So I might bench him in that case. So he's LB 25 for me this week. So I moved him down for that exact reason until he's healthy and off the injury report. Then I'll move him back up. On the Dallas side of things, we do have a pretty decent matchup as far as the Rams pass blocking unit goes. They are ranked 29th in the league in pass blocking grade at 47.3. So the 4th best matchup for pass rushers. Do you like Micah Parsons this week? No, I'm kidding. Obviously, we love Micah Parsons this week. He's edge 1 for me. But anybody else on Dallas that you like for this game?
One name I'm surprised I haven't heard more of was DeMarcus Lawrence, and so it'd be interesting to see, if he can kind of come through and capitalize on this matchup. I feel like we've seen him do that in years past, right? He's always just been very efficient as a veteran pass rusher on a good team, right? Where obviously Micah Parsons is drawing a lot of the attention. Mozzie Smith, as a rookie, has come in strong in a rotation in the interior of that defense and really forced teams to, be put out on islands or keep in tight ends to block or support on these things. So, yeah, I think DeMarcus Lawrence would be the one I'd be really interested in seeing. Can this veteran become relevant again as, maybe that high upside, play type of approach where, hey, I got an injury or, bye weeks, obviously again, not this week, but in those situations where he can be very relevant. But even in a favorable matchup, maybe we find a way for him as into our DL2-3 range.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I have him. I have him as edge 20 this week, and he's really been excellent this year. He doesn't get, like you said, nearly the recognition that he maybe deserves, especially with the spotlight on Micah Parsons all the time. But 84.6 pass rush grade. It's 12th among edge defenders, 21 total pressures, which is tied for 26th. Just the 2 sacks on the year. He's gone 3 straight without one. But like I said, that Rams pass blocking unit is not great. Stafford has been a bit below average in his pressure to sack conversion rate, which you like for Lawrence and Parsons, obviously, as well. Even Osa Odigizua has been really good pass rusher this year from their interior. So yeah, I really like DeMarcus Lawrence this week. He's got the run defense chops as well. He's the leading. I believe he's number 1 among edge defenders in run defense grade this year, 91.8. So great spot to make tackles if he gets those opportunities, which the Rams don't give a ton to the defensive line. But I do like this matchup quite a bit for DeMarcus Lawrence. Anybody else on Dallas or the Rams before we move on that you want to talk about?
I think the one that stands out to me a bit is Jaron Curse. I think that's one where, been a little disappointing this year, especially in terms of his tackle floor. I think, he's recorded a sack and an interception in separate weeks. So he has the made some of those splash plays for us to keep him very relevant in that regard. However, just, really good utilization, lining up primarily as a box safety. And just not what we've come to expect from him in the past. So I think that's one where maybe just, hey, hold on to him. The process looks good. Maybe it doesn't felt so good so far to start this year, but keep plugging him in there. And then just a call out of Damone Clark. It was really interesting and cool to see him get 71 of the 72 snaps last week when, historically with the defense here, they have not always, Dan Quinn has not always plugged in a linebacker that heavily, right? Because Curse is usually the one wearing the green dot or someone else from the secondary. And so, yeah, Clark looking good there. And then Marquise Bell is kind of the name that's been floating around in IDP circles, right? This is kind of maybe a potential cheat code. He's only getting about 50%, snap utilization, but lining up primarily as that other off-ball linebacker, and a lot of platforms have him as a defensive back, safety, designation. So if he all of a sudden starts to sneak up to that 70-80% range somehow, some way, that could be a massive cheat code in some of our platforms for us. So
yeah, those are great calls for sure. And yeah, I like Jaron Curse as well. He gets the right deployment that we're looking for as far as IDP safeties goes. He just hasn't been overly effective yet. I think that'll come as long as that alignment and everything continues for him. Not the best matchup for safeties this week, but I still have him like in that kind of safety 2 range as well. So I'm probably starting him for the most part, but yeah, there's potential at least for better options. And then we could maybe give him some time to get back on track too. But I do like Jaron Curse. That's a good call. Okay, let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. So for this one, let's start with, let's start with the safeties for the Minnesota Vikings, okay? Because Cameron Bynum has been obviously incredible. Harrison Smith has been actually excellent as well. Josh Metellus is now getting in some work as well. He was 100% safety this past week. So the only problem here for the Minnesota safeties this week is they're going against the Packers, who rank dead last in tackles allowed to the safety position this year at 8.7 per game. So with Minnesota having potentially 3 full-time options there, it really kind of thins out the pie for these guys with Bynum and Josh Metellus also getting in the mix. Bynum, I think, leads all safeties who have played at least 50% of snaps in tackle efficiency at 14%. He's added 2 interceptions on the year, which he did last week as well. So Metellus also a guy that's getting strong IDP deployment that we like to see. Smith's been the one moving around a bit more. Him and Bynum actually both have been moving around quite a bit. Bynum only less than 50% of snaps deep. So he's not like a true deep safety that most people think he is. But yeah, if I had to pick one to kind of fade this week, it's probably Harrison Smith. So Harrison Smith, I have as safety 25 this week. I know he's been really, really good. He's got decent deployment as well, but this is not a great matchup again. 32nd, so last place for tackles to the safety position. How about you? Do you have a different take here or a different safety to potentially fade from this group?
No, I think I like what you're saying there. For me, I really look at Harrison Smith as kind of that more boomer bust type. And there he's been booming this year. And I mean, why not with this Brian Flores defense where they love that cover zero look and bringing safeties up and getting them after the quarterback in the backfield. So Metellus is probably him and Bynum are definitely probably the safer ones. They will probably be the ones absorbing most of the tackles, I'm going to say, this week. And yeah, I mean, Jordan Love just hasn't been effective downfield passing yet this year, in my opinion. So it's unlikely that safeties are going to get a lot of work in that regard. So
yeah, the matchup just not good for the safeties. Anybody else on Minnesota that you'd want to talk about in this one?
I just wish Ivan Pace could play more, but other than that, no, I don't have too much more than that.
I'm glad we got our one Ivan Pace shout out. I think we kept the streak going there, so I appreciate that. I'm with you. It's a fairly obvious group. We start, Jordan Hicks and Danielle Hunter, obviously, but there's not a ton here for Minnesota. So let's talk about Green Bay. Let me pull up their slide. There it is. Green Bay, one of the most interesting players to me has to be Rashawn Gary. So Rashawn Gary coming out of the bye week returned to more of a fairly like a normal snap share, without any kind of playing time limitations this past week. He played 68% of snaps for the first time all year. He was below 50% prior to the bye week. So Gary really has been like an elite edge rusher this season, even last season before the injury. So the only thing is he obviously didn't have a strong game last week, and I do feel comfortable starting him in lineups going forward. But this is one of the tougher matchups, at least as far as offensive line goes. The Minnesota Vikings, one of the best pass blocking units in the league, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. And they also don't give up a lot of tackles to the defensive line position, so that makes it harder. Kirk Cousins has done a nice job of avoiding sacks against pressures as well. So this match, I typically will want to put Rashawn Gary inside the top 12 edge defenders for me, but he's edge 15 this week. He's still in that range because he's been so elite. 29.6% win rate, which is first among edge defenders. 26.5% pressure rate is second. So that all of that stuff is great. It's just this is a tougher matchup for him. So I did move him down a little bit this week. How do you feel about Gary going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to kind of sum it up there. The biggest thing for me is, right, the Vikings are clearly a pass happy team. I don't know the numbers, but they're one of the better or higher pass rates in neutral game scripts. And so all that said, right, that's just more pure opportunities that should present itself for Gary. And like you said, he is back to playing at an elite level. So all he needs is that one opportunity, or he can make kind of his whole week in one play potentially at some time. So I definitely am with you. Maybe just lower those expectations, right? You should be able to plug and play him still, but maybe you manipulate your lineup, right? A little bit of game theory in terms of how you want to approach that overall for what the roster you're putting out this week. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see Gary coming back to form. That was someone I think a lot of people, you yourself included, helping lead the charge as he was going to really have such an amazing year last year, and it seemed like it. So it's great to see him recovering from that injury and getting back to that form.
Yeah, he's been awesome this year. I really hope he stays healthy. I do have money on him as comeback player of the year at plus 7,500. Damar Hamlin still hasn't played defensive snap, so that's the thing I got going for me that I'm holding out hope for. We'll see if the NFL feels the same way. But yeah, the other thing for Green Bay, the linebackers are somewhat interesting, right? I mean, Quay Walker got doubled up in total tackles by his own teammate Isaiah McDuffie last week. So McDuffie, it was interesting because he only played 66% of the defensive snaps. Quay Walker played 100% of the defensive snaps, but just wasn't nearly as effective. So I do like this as a nice bounce back spot for Quay Walker. He's playing again in another zone heavy defense, which we love for IDP linebackers and tackle efficiency. And their opponent, Minnesota, is 12th in tackles allowed to the linebacker position as well. So that helps him a little bit having an above average matchup. But McDuffie, yeah, we'll see if he continues to play. Devondre Campbell is potentially going to be back this week. We'll see on that one. Still questionable at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, I just assumed that's because I played against Isaiah McDuffie in my main league, my main home league last week. So that's why I was like, how can this guy pile up 10 tackles? I think like 8 of them in the first half.
Yeah.
I was like, But yeah, so the only other thing I'd call out for Green Bay is Darnell Savage, I think just went to the IR today officially. So fire up all your Jonathan Owens shares for all you deep leagues or people in a pinch here. He's stepped in and when from the injury, and he was 40% box utilization this last week, and coming into the game automatically like that. So, with a full week to prepare, I don't know how they'll deploy him necessarily, but he's had good box utilization in the past, previously with the Texans. So, I mean, again, if you're in a deeper league and you need that guy to throw in there, Jonathan Owens can definitely be that person.
Yeah, that's a good shout for sure. All right, let's move to the New Orleans Saints at the Indianapolis Colts. Where do you want to start with these two teams?
I just want to shout out Carl Granderson first on the Saints side, and I hopefully everyone at this point realizes that should be a plug and play, DL1-2 for you. What a beautiful year he's had coming in, getting his chance to be a full-time starter from the last 4 years, more of a part-time role, and I just love he's making impacts, pressures, getting the sacks, have a couple big multi-sack games. When he's not doing that, he's racking up tackles and run defense. And last week, a downfield fumble recovery, just the hustle play down the field, right? He got the balls bouncing around and he comes up with it. So he's been just a beautiful revelation this year. So I just wanted to call that out. So as far as the Saints overall, I think you got him here as a pretty good matchup against the Colts for both the linebackers and safety. The one name that used to be IDP darling, Tyrann Mathieu. Do you feel like this matchup's good enough for him to come through? He has been kind of fading into the background here quite a bit lately, in my opinion.
Yeah, he really has. And he's had good deployment too for the most part this season, and he just hasn't been effective. And this has kind of been like typical of him. He's kind of always been like this more of a big play type threat, more so than like an efficient tackler, dependent on where he lines up. When he was with Kansas City, it was kind of the same thing. He'd have decent usage there, but would get out tackled by like Daniel Sorensen, who wasn't necessarily even playing a full-time role. So Mathieu can definitely be a frustrating player. But it is, like you said, it's a good matchup. The Saints, or the Colts, are giving up the 5th most tackles per game to the safety position this season. So you like that about about him. But it's probably going to end up being like Marcus May or something, right? So he's up and down, and he's harder to trust. So I'd have to see where I have him ranked exactly to give you a better idea. So yeah, like low end safety 2 this weekend. It's just because of the matchup essentially. So I'm willing to give him a shot because he's going against the Colts, and the Colts have given up those points, but like really just low end. So not like high expectations necessarily for him. A low end starter for me this week.
Yeah, and I think that checks out. And I did not think we'd have a Daniel Sorensen reference this week, so I gotta love that. But as for the linebackers, I think Werner's. He's maybe had some down games the last few weeks, and I know that the Saints aren't always the most ideal matchup per some of your guys' numbers and research. But I still think that this is just something where I think he's going to volume his way into a very relevant week this week.
Mhm.
I don't have the exact numbers, but it's the Colts just run a crap ton of plays, it seems like. And that's
Those
I
are the
think that's just
exact
this.
numbers. Yeah.
Yep, checks out. But Shane Steichen just has this offense going at a different level and a different pace, and I think that worst case, these guys will volume their way into a very strong, relevant week.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? Like Pete Werner, Demario Davis, we expect these guys to be playing full-time snaps. I know it is more of a more man-heavy defense there for the Saints, so that does kind of hurt their tackle efficiency from time to time. But I think it's sixth most I have on the screen there at sixth most tackles to the linebacker position this season from Indianapolis. So going to New Orleans linebackers, so that could help them. I know Demario Davis, he didn't play a full game this past week. He was a game time decision coming in with an injury. So I think that limited kind of his snaps a little bit, just to hopefully not re-injure, get a re-injury risk there. And now, especially on a shorter week, but he's got a 10-day layoff. He should be back in a full-time role here for week 8. But yeah, both guys, Pete Werner, Demario Davis, both been kind of really inefficient. I have Demario Davis as LB 40 this week, and Pete Werner is LB 32. So this is one where like the matchup is good, but I have less faith, I guess, in the linebackers. Let's talk about Indianapolis. Anybody on the Colts that you want to focus on here?
I think when you look at the linebacker room, I think they should be able to really have a great week this week, especially if this New Orleans Saints offense keeps functioning with a check down heavy role for Kamara and Derek Carr. I think he's averaging almost 10 targets or 10 targets or 10 receptions over the last 2 weeks here. So they've obviously, Zaire's been one of the most efficient tacklers in the league so far. So obviously we're firing him up. The real question comes into, is Shaq seemingly on a pitch count? It seems like, because really the number seems to come around somewhere between 45, 50 every week for him in terms of snaps he's playing. And can he do enough with that? And I always get nervous with him because he used to thrive on making big plays, and now he's just an average tackler. So I'm hesitant, to say Shaq Leonard's someone we're looking to fire up. Obviously, EJ Speed, some of the snap or the volumes was kind of going back and forth between them earlier this year with some health questions for Shaq. They're both interesting matchups in deeper formats, but I can't really see them being relevant in terms of, a top 36 linebacker for me this week.
Yeah, it's tough to trust these guys, and the way that the Colts have deployed them too, like Shaq Leonard being basically strictly the early down linebacker. He played 91% of his snaps on first and second down last week, only 10% on the third and fourth down, whereas EJ Speed played 90% on third and fourth down, but only 24% on those early downs, right? So that's kind of the way that they're deploying them. So that means that Leonard's always going to get more snaps than EJ Speed as long as that continues, and they're the more of the rundown snaps as well, so that might help his tackle efficiency. But I'm with you. I'm not overly, excited about starting either one of these guys, especially well, obviously not EJ Speed in most leagues. I'm not starting him, but Shaq Leonard I have as like LB 42 this week, and that's going into a matchup where the Saints are top 10 to linebacker tackles, are yielding linebacker tackles. That is a tough thing to say, and I'm not used to saying it. Yielding tackles to the linebacker position, the Saints are top 10. Okay, so so even in the positive matchup for Shaquille Leonard, I still don't love him this week at LB 42 there for me. So somebody that I do like on Indianapolis is Julian Blackmon. I know that he's been fairly quiet the past couple of weeks, right? He hasn't had like these huge tackle games. He did have an interception in there somewhere, I think. But yep. Yeah, 4 or 5 tackles or fewer the past 3 games, but really some of the best usage for an IDP safety that we can ask for. 46% of his defensive snaps in the box this season. all of those games where he managed 5 or fewer tackles, the last 3, all came against below average opponents in allowing tackles to the safety position. 2 of them, Tennessee and Jacksonville, are among the bottom 5 in giving up tackles to opposing safeties. So this week should be able to get back on track, I think, thanks to his ideal usage again and a matchup against the Saints, who are a top 12 team in giving up tackles to the safety position. So Julian Blackmon comes in as safety 8 for me this week.
And I got to call out the EJ Speed start. I am starting him in the Big Nickel podcast league against you this week, John. So that's a very deep league, but
it is.
That is where I'm at in that league. So
yeah, it's that one is ridiculously deep. I think we start like 5 defensive linemen as well, right? And yep. 4 linebackers. So yeah, it gets messy. It's understandable to start him in there.
And it's a 14 team too, I think. So on top of that, so
yeah. So I think, are we both undefeated in that one? Are we both 7-0?
I'm not. I just lost this last week, so I'm 6-1 coming in. So
you ruined it. We would have had an undefeated matchup here.
Can you imagine the views we would have had on that?
Oh my God, that's all right. I'll stay as the only undefeated team. I appreciate that. We'll see if that continues after this week. But yeah, any other notes here from Indianapolis or New Orleans for you?
I think we can jump into the Patriots and Dolphins.
Let's do it. New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. So for this one, I like trying to figure out where I want to start because I don't have like a specific starting point in my notes at all. But I want to start with the New England safeties here. Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers have both been pretty solid for IDP purposes lately, right? So Duggar is the one getting the ideal usage in the box, 35% last week, and that came with a 100% overall snap share for him. Jabril Peppers basically playing an every down role as well, and he's kind of seeing opportunities all over the field. So I'm at the point where I feel like I can trust both of these guys in lineups, and I think that's kind of rare for New England to have more than one IDP that you can trust on any given week. But that's kind of where we're at with these safeties here. So it's also a positive matchup. Miami's giving up the 4th most tackles to the safety position on a per game basis this year at 15.1 per game. So yeah, Kyle Duggar, I am putting as safety 4, Jabril Peppers as safety 21. How are you feeling about these guys? Do you feel like the rug's going to get pulled out from under us at some point soon?
You want to say it is just because it is a Bill Belichick defense, and defensive backs of all things have been just the bee's knees for him to rotate. Like, I don't know why he loves it so much, but I don't think it's going to happen, at least, especially not this week. I just don't think they can afford that. I think Duggar has shown that he's very capable on the back end of that defense as well, but obviously he still gets, like you said, strong utilization in the box. So I'm excited for him this week. I'm with you in that top 5 even level of ranking for him. And Jabril Peppers has been a fun resurgence for him as well, right? You looked at your I think he was a top 20, top 25 draft pick for the Browns. You know, he's this uber athletic, use him all over the field, and kind of faded away. And Belichick's found a way to kind of bring him back to life here, especially for IDP relevance. And no, I like where you got them both, and I'm excited to plug them into our lineups until Belichick gives us a reason not to. So, and hopefully that never happens this season.
Yeah, hopefully not. Anything else for the New England IDPs for you?
No, I mean, there's a reason that there's very few to talk about. It is New England, so.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I think one note that I did have: Josh Uche, Keon White both missed last game. Matt Judon was obviously on out with the torn pec. He's on IR. So Anthony Jennings and Dietrich Wise both played a ridiculous snap share. Jennings was 97%, Dietrich Wise 96%. They were the only 2 like true edge defenders, and Bill just left them out there for basically the entire game. So if he does it again, maybe they could be like decent like volume based plays, but yeah, not overly excited about them and their pass rush metrics necessarily. So let's talk about the Miami Dolphins here and start with Jalen Phillips, who did see a snap increase this week. It's his 2nd game back from injury now. So he played fewer than 50% of Miami's defensive snaps last week in his 1st game back from injury, but got that back up this week. And of course, I don't have the exact percentage in front of me, but you know what? He was back to kind of looking like the solid Jalen Phillips that we've expected, and 70% snap share for him. So 7 total tackles. He landed a sack in there as well. This is a decent matchup, at least as far as their pass blocking unit goes. The Patriots are the 6th worst pass blocking unit in the NFL this season, although Mac Jones has done a decent job of avoiding sacks somehow. So we hope that Jalen Phillips is able to at least get home quickly because he should be able to win his matchups. It's just a matter of finishing. But he has been somebody that, again, very excited about this season and nice to see him back in the lineup. I put him as edge 14 this week.
Yeah, no, I was all aboard the Jalen Phillips hype train this year. It was really disappointing to see him get hurt, especially after he had such a strong week one. I don't know, he had some crazy tackle number, I feel like, in week one, and some good pressure rate too. So yeah, just great to see him back out there, and I really hope he can come back into form fully, like he showed us last week as well as week one. So
for sure. Anybody else on Miami? Javon Holland he's in the concussion protocol. He should be considered questionable this week. It would probably be like Elijah Campbell or Brandon Jones or a combination of both to fill in for him. But anybody else worth talking about here for the Dolphins?
I think, we talked about Phillips and his injury. Andrew Van Ginkel seems to be kind of the guy who always benefits from the increased playing time when Phillips goes out, but he did still see 43 snaps last week. So I think 10 or 12 at off-ball linebacker as well, and 20, 30 from the edge, whatever that rolls out to. So they clearly have a desire to keep rolling him out. So probably someone when we have weeks with actual buys that can help support your team. And obviously has that that handcuff upside if Phillips goes out, that Van Ginkel's going to start rolling up his opportunities, and he's been relatively successful with them this year too.
Yeah, he's been solid. And yeah, they obviously like him there in that kind of hybrid role. So again, somebody on sleeper that has a DL designation that you can maybe pop into linebacker spot or vice versa and still get some production out of him, even with Jalen Phillips back in the lineup. Maybe he plays a little bit more linebacker. And David Long did leave the last game injured as well. So that could potentially help him as well if Long misses this game. All right, let's go on to the New York Jets and the New York Giants. Where do you want to start with this one?
Well, New Jersey, right? Because neither team actually plays in New York. So of all things. Sorry, a little geography joke there for all of our fans there. We can start with the Giants because goodness gracious. I mean, I know it was the Washington Commanders, but that defensive line just absolutely destroyed last year, which is kind of what at least me, hopefully others were seeing from, coming into this season. We really expected this to be a strength for the New York Giants, and they showed out exactly what it can be. Specifically, Dexter Lawrence, who really had a breakout campaign last year. Kayvon Thibodeau came on strong last year after some injuries and his high draft capital. So I really expect more of the same in this matchup. I look at the Jets as kind of a semi-favorable matchup at times. But yeah, you got them ranked up pretty high there. So I mean, I'm with that. Part of it, I think, is a combination of Zach Wilson and what he does in the pocket or doesn't do in the pocket. I maybe should more aptly say, but yeah, I mean, those are guys that I think we all kind of maybe know already. But I think we should play them with some real high upside expectations this week. I really think that we're going to be looking at a game where both Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau are able to come away with some big plays for us.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Yeah, we talked about Dexter Lawrence last week on the pod. Expected him to kind of come through and get his first sack of the season last week. He ended up getting 2. So he doubled up for us there, which was really nice. And I'm with you. I think this could be another nice performance for that Giants defensive line, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams. And yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau specifically comes into this week red hot, really. He's delivered 5.5 sacks in 5 games, now draws a strong matchup against the Jets, who ranked 26th in pass blocking grade, and Zach Wilson, who has allowed a pressure to sack conversion rate among the 10 worst in the league. So Thibodeau, the main thing that helps him, not amazing pass rush metrics by any means, but he's averaging 88% of defensive snaps on the year, which puts him in a great spot really to get plenty of those sack opportunities again this week. So really kind of a matchup and playing time based decision here. I put him at edge 11 for this week going against the Jets.
Yeah. And then looking at first sacks, right? Quinnen Williams. I mean, absolutely ridiculous in my mind that he hasn't been able to get home yet. I mean, you look at his win rates and pass rush sets, his pass rush pressure rate. I mean, everything is ideal for him. I think, I mean, based on the numbers I usually run, I'd expect him around like 4.5 sacks already based on what he's done, and just nothing. So against a Giants offensive line that's shown that it can leak holes, quite a bit more than a bullet riddled boat. I think that this is something where Quinnen Williams finds a way to get his first sack, probably his first and his second this week. And then, on top of that, I just love that the whole story with his brother, from a couple of years ago, them coming together. Quincy as I think it was an unrestricted free agent and or an undrafted free agent, excuse me. And, from there, he's really carved out a role for himself. And beyond that, he's just made himself almost invaluable to this team after getting the big contract this offseason as well. So I love what he's done. I don't see how you can't fire Quincy up as a top 20 linebacker moving forward, and unless again injuries or something want to slow him down. But his efficiency, his volume, his play has dictated that's where we need to keep him, in my opinion.
Yeah, with you 100%. I'm not letting Quincy Williams or CJ Mosley leave my lineups, but also with you in that Quinnen Williams, he has to get his first full sack this week. I mean, this is huge. Like coming out of the bye week, 75.1 pass rush grade, 25 pressures, 5 QB hits, going against the Giants, who rank dead last in pass blocking grade as a team. And if it's Daniel Jones back there, he has the second highest pressure to sack conversion rate in the league this season. So we're calling it. We're calling Quinnen Williams first sack, potentially 2. Lock it in. We need it this week. Let's go. All right, let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'll start here with Josh Allen, who has been really, really great this season. And I don't think people are giving him the credit that he deserves. Even still, when he already has 6.5 sacks on the season, he's in the midst of really like a career year in terms of pass rush metrics, earning an 85.0 pass rush grade through 7 weeks, which ranks 11th among edge defenders. He's got an 18.2% pass rush win rate as well, which is by far the best of his career. I have him as edge 7 this week, draws a favorable matchup against the Steelers pass blocking unit, which ranks 31st in the league in pass blocking grade with a 38.6. This is a guy, he's mostly lining up on the right side of the defensive line as well, so going against the left tackle. Pittsburgh's left tackle is a man named Dan Moore, who owns a 27.0 pass blocking grade on the year, which ranks 76th among 77 qualifying offensive tackles. The main thing is that Kenny Pickett has kind of been the saving grace for the Steelers team in that he's been like decent at avoiding sacks this season, or at least like closer to league average, I should say, which is impressive given the offensive line that he's playing behind. But he's not, Patrick Mahomes by any means. He's definitely going to end up in the dirt a few times. I don't think there's any doubt that it should be Josh Allen that's the favorite to put him there a couple times this week, hopefully.
Yeah, and unless the people forget, this was your dark horse candidate for DL1 coming into the season. So I think everything's lining up exactly as you called it, and yeah, it's been beautiful to see him to deliver this volume or this production consistently too throughout the year. This year so far, I know at times he's been kind of boom or bust for us, or feast or famine, however you want to look at it. So no, I love it. Josh Allen, fire him up everywhere, and if you got him, hold him. You shouldn't be looking to sell this performance. I think this is what's to be expected for him coming forward.
Yeah, he's been excellent. We got the 2 full-time linebackers there in Foye Oluokun and Devin Lloyd. We don't really need to go too much into them. We know we like those guys for most weeks, even though this isn't the most amazing matchup going against the Steelers. But a player that, maybe not as interesting for me is Andre Sisco of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's their safety there. And I know he's been a productive IDP so far, thanks to like 3 interceptions. He's got a forced fumble as well. But playing 68% of his snaps deep. The Steelers ranked 29th in tackles per game to the safety position as well. Like he's a true deep safety guy. I know he left last game with an injury. He's potentially back this week, but if not, I don't like him or his replacement, Andrew Wingard. They both should play similar roles. So you got Rayshon Jenkins there as well, plays closer to the line of scrimmage. He's been a more efficient tackler than Andre Sisco on the season. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out as safety to kind of fade this week going against a poor matchup here against Jacksonville. How about on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of things? Anybody that you want to focus on for this one or call out?
For me, I'd probably be looking at fading some of the linebacker play there. When I look at it, I kind of view the Jags as not always a middle to kind of bottom half for linebacker performance. At least when I look at some of the numbers I track, I'm not sure where you got them. You got them.
So I got them.
Oh, actually, you got them as one of the better matchups. Okay,
this week, yeah, they've done well. To move themselves up the rankings here a little bit. They've allowed the second most tackles to the linebacker position, but I hear you because it's been kind of an inconsistent group there for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously LB2 in Pittsburgh is something you're probably staying away from. Your Quan Alexander is the snap leader at this point in terms of LB2. Landon Roberts definitely gets some of those looks in some of the heavier sets, right, or those run first type situations. Cole Holcomb, who is someone who's delivered relative efficiency for us in the past, just hasn't seemed to be able to put that together, whether that's working behind, maybe not as talented of a defensive line. I mean, obviously you have Watt and Highsmith there, but in Washington, you had Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. I mean, that had to keep him clean almost every down when you have that running in front of you. So, to me, the linebackers, if you have Holcomb, you're playing them most likely. But I'm really lowering expectations or fading them this week. Hopefully, maybe your numbers prove us wrong this week. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand with the Pittsburgh linebackers.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I got Holcomb as exactly like you said. If you have him, you're probably playing him because he's like LB 22 for me this week. But yeah, don't love the other guys just because it's inconsistent usage and that those snap shares are pretty different. Like Quan Alexander is like LB 58 for me this week. So even in a positive matchup, you just don't trust the usage. We got all these teams back this week, so there's plenty of options out there to trust, and you don't have to depend on the matchup for some of these guys with unstable playing time. So yeah, Cole Holcomb's probably the lone one for me as well. We don't really need to talk about the defensive line. We know who those guys are. We know we're playing them. Minkah Fitzpatrick, though, who has been, again, really strong IDP this year. Cameron Bynum as well. He's very similar to him. They both actually share the top spot in tackle efficiency for safeties this season at 14%, just among guys that have played 50% of snaps. So he's another one that gets pegged as like a typical deep safety, but not like an Andre Sisco in any kind of way, because he's also played less than 50% of his snaps deep this year. He's moved around a fair bit as well, and that's helped him get his tackle efficiency up. But it's not a great matchup. The Jags are 30th in tackles per game to the safety position. So I did move Minkah Fitzpatrick down a little bit. He's actually safety 20 for me this week, so still startable, but tempering expectations to more of like a safety 2 range for me this week. All right, let us go to, actually, let's do a quick ad break here before we finish off the second half of games. And this one is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players. If they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So, Jake, last week, Evan and I, we went with, what did we go with? We went with Marcus May under 5.5 tackles, and we went with Rachaad White under 51.5 total tackles. I made Evan uncomfortable with the under bets there. He's an over bets guy, but we hit both, which brings us now to 4-0 on the year on our Prize Picks. So this week, here's the picks. There's not as many that are up right now. We just got the Thursday night defensive props up there. So I picked out two. We talked about this game at the top here, and I'm going with Levante David over 8.5 total tackles. Again, the Bills, I believe they were fourth in tackles per game to the linebacker position, and Devin White being as inefficient as he's been, I think there's some potential there for Levante David to do some damage and get potentially into double-digit tackles this week. And then the other one I went for is Jamel Dean over 4.5 total tackles. We didn't cover the corners too much when we talked about this game, but the Bills were, I believe, fourth for corner tackles per game as well. And Jamel Dean, a 100% player over there for them. So I do want to see if he can get to at least 5 total tackles this week. How do you feel about these ones? We're going to hit.
Oh, the David one feels like a smash to me. The Dean one, the way they hyper target Stephon Diggs in that offense, I'm not saying Dean's going to shadow him, but he should get enough work on him as probably, their lead corner. As long as it doesn't seem to be one of these weeks where people just can't tackle Stephon Diggs and then he breaks away for huge touchdowns. Dean, I think, should easily hit that over. So.
Yeah, the corner overs are always a little bit tricky, but yeah, I like the matchup this week, and hopefully he can get us there. But head over to Prize Picks. Again, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projection. So you could go to prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy and use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/PFF fantasy and use code PFF fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, Atlanta Falcons at the Tennessee Titans. Jake, where do you want to start with this one?
I feel like I got to start with Caden Ellis on the Falcons side. He was one of my flag plants coming into this year. He's been, I don't want to say wildly inefficient. I think he's around 10 or 10.5% tackle efficiency. But he's got the volume, he's got the green dot. His upside that we saw in terms of pass rush with New Orleans seems to have dissipated, which is disappointing following his defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen here. He's probably a great guy to still have on your roster for injuries and bye weeks. He's probably more in that LB4 range, but again, can step up maybe in some more ideal matchups. It should be an interesting week, especially with Will Levis and Malik Willis likely in line here for this defense to really capitalize on some things. But just overall, Ellis has been a bit disappointing, I think, to say the least for me.
He really has, right? Like like you said, 10% tackle efficiency, 9.9 to be exact on the year, which is 49th among linebackers. And do you know who he's tied with? Alex Anzalone of the Detroit Lions. I know it does make you shudder, right? Because we know how inefficient Anzalone is, but Caden Ellis has been the same level of inefficient as Alex Anzalone. Again, average tackle efficiency for the linebacker position, 13.2%. So these guys below 3% lower than the average there. He's playing every snap, which is great, but you got Nate Landman outproducing him, and Landman isn't always playing every snap either, right? So yeah, not a great matchup. Tennessee 23rd in tackles per game to the linebacker position at 16 per game. So there's at least potential we even see more Nate Landman this week against the Titans that, they don't run a lot of 11 personnel. They're 27th in the league in 11 personnel. So we might see more linebackers out there this week just because of the matchup. So with Landman on the field, it kind of takes away a little bit from Caden Ellis's opportunity as well, right?
I agree. But at least we have some good stories out of Atlanta. Like David Onyemata. It's been wonderful to see him produce alongside Grady Jarrett this year. And it's nice to see that defensive front actually trending in the right direction where I think they've averaged like 1 sack or like 0.7 sacks or something like that per game over the last 3 years. Yeah. So, they're at 13 now, which, isn't anything to write home about. The lowest in the season so far seems to be 9 with the Houston Texans, unfortunately. But, it's just nice to see them coming up from just that terrible, terrible production to being at least, sniffing closer to average, and being more viable for us for that IDP front as well from the Falcons.
Yeah, Onyemata's been awesome. I think it's a career year as far as like pass rush grade goes for him, 83.7 on the year. And then his overall defensive grade, an 89.5. He's got 2.5 sacks on the year. He's got those strong pass rush metrics, playing time. It's a decent matchup. The Titans are a top 10 matchup for pass rushers as far as going against poor pass blocking units. And then I think the chart here that I have up on the screen is for Ryan Tannehill's pressure to sack conversion rate, which is the third worst in the league. So doesn't account for potential 2 QB system that they're going to be running there in Tennessee. But again, the pass blocking grade for Tennessee is among the bottom 10 in the league as well. So David Onyemata has been excellent. And yeah, he would definitely be somebody to be playing. I think I have him as DT 11 this week. So I do like Onyemata. Anybody else on Atlanta that you want to cover?
No, I mean, Richie Grant. I wish I could see a little bit more from him at times. Yeah. I know we were both fans of him coming in from his draft season, but he's had his ups and downs this year. But I think just the deployment of them hasn't allowed him to be as relevant as we'd like. But that's just me being biased towards guys I like.
No, I hear you. And I kind of feel it's not a great matchup either. The Titans are 31st in the league to tackles allowed to the safety position. So I don't really even like this matchup for Jesse Bates, who's been great this year, but really one of the more deep safeties in the league, right? 76% of his snaps have been spent deep. He's been a decent tackler, but he's also had like the 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, which are a bit more unstable, especially week to week, right? And now going against the Titans, who are 31st in tackles allowed to the safety position per game. Richie Grant, he's there. He's playing close to the line of scrimmage. He's been a fine tackler in his own right, so he could take away from those chances. But yeah, fewer than 10 tackles per game to the safety position doesn't leave a lot of meat on the bone for both guys to be able to feast this week. So Jesse Bates is safety 18 for me this week. Yeah. Let's go to the Tennessee Titans now. And let me pull their screen up. There it is. And so the Titans, anybody that you'd want to touch on here for Tennessee?
I think, the one name that really stands out to me, obviously like Azeez Al-Shaair we're playing, Jeffrey Simmons we're playing, Danico Autry, Arden Key. Those guys have been a nice realization for the Titans overall as well. And I think that they're all viable, but really the one that stands out for me is Jack Gibbens. So someone who has really lived on just some real extreme efficiencies. I think he's 16-17% tackle efficiency, somewhere in that neighborhood. On 65-70% snaps. Usually that type of utilization isn't enough to really be relevant as a top 30 linebacker, but he finds a way to do that. And here against the Falcons, I think that efficiency and even lesser than ideal snap count utilization, he's still going to find a way to be very, very relevant for us this week.
Yeah, he's really been great. And yeah, even if it's not a full-time role necessarily, like he's just found ways to be effective. And this is a great matchup. The Falcons are the 4th best matchup for tackles to the linebacker position. So obviously love it for Azeez Al-Shaair, who's like coming off back-to-back 15 tackle games prior to their bye week. But Jack Gibbens can get in there as well. So like him quite a bit as well. I think I have Al-Shaair as LB 11 this week. And then Gibbons is LB 38. So he's more, in that LB 3 range for me just because of the fluctuating snap share. But I could stand to move him up a little bit as well because of the matchup and yeah, how effective he's been. All right. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. NFC East battle here. Where do you want to start with these two teams?
Well, we can land in Philadelphia as seemingly Kevin Byard has landed now in Philadelphia. So Howie Roseman strikes again.
I know. Yeah, he's been killing it. The Byard. I guess it was what was it, on Monday? Yeah. So on Monday, the Eagles traded for Kevin Byard from the Tennessee Titans, and they sent them Terrell Edmonds as well. So I don't think a lot of people caught that the Terrell Edmonds went the other way, but
Yep.
obviously Kevin Byard is going to be a starter on this defense now, and likely next to Reed Blankenship, but when he's healthy, right? So Blankenship, I know, dealing with injury right now, but he is kind of set as their starter. If Blankenship can't go, then Sidney Brown would be the next guy in line here for the Eagles safety room. So we like those guys. I think I have Kevin Byard as safety 17 for me this week. I know it's going into a new team, it's a little shaky, but so just kind of mid safety 2 for me this week. The other thing for Philadelphia has been their linebackers, right? So Zach Cunningham was their lone every down linebacker last week. Nakobe Dean he's kind of ramping up his playing time, it seems, coming off the injured reserve. Could potentially see more snaps this week, but I don't know that he's necessarily somebody that I want to trust just yet in lineups. I don't know. How do you feel about the Eagles linebacker situation right now? Is there a guy that you do trust, and how do you feel about putting Nakobe Dean in a lineup?
I feel like it is Zach Cunningham at this point. For me, that is the one that I'm willing to trust. I mean, if you're in a pinch, I get throwing Nakobe Dean out there because he's shown early production at the start of this year to be a very viable IDP linebacker for us. Until I can see a full complement of snaps from him, I'm going to have a bit of that hesitancy. And I don't know if it's just one of those things where, players get injured and then the backups come in and they're like, oh yeah, like this is what we have here, right? Or now they've got more experience with the guys because you've been out for the however many few weeks, and something that fully slated to be kind of a 2 primary linebackers, that's it, now ends up really being a rotation for the rest of the year. So I need to see that to have greater confidence to play Nakobe Dean, with that high level of confidence.
Yeah, I'm with you. 61% of snaps last week is not ideal, right? Again, we got all 32 teams playing this week. So if you're in a redraft league, you can drop Nakobe Dean, pick up another option that's a safer bet to play snaps this week, because it does seem like they maybe want to take their time and kind of ramping him up. The other player worth mentioning, I mean, obviously, look, the Eagles defensive line is going to feast this week, right? Sam Howell, the sack fetishist, as we've been calling him on this podcast, has now taken 40 sacks on the year. He has the highest pressure to sack conversion rate in the league at 33.1%. The main one, I guess, for me is Jalen Carter. So this is the guy that I really like. I'm putting him as DT6 this week. He has a 90 pass rush grade on the year as a rookie, which ranks 3rd best at his position. He's also totaled 27 pressures, which is 4th most. And now he has 3.5 sacks on the year as well. So he did miss the game prior to last week due to an injury. And then he did appear to be kind of eased back into action this week. So that kind of hurt his overall playing time. I believe he played 39% of the defensive snaps this past week, but it's been another week of getting healthier for Jalen Carter. Now, I think that snap share kind of comes back up, especially given how well he's played in a division matchup here. I think Jalen Carter feasts this week as well.
I think the only question is does he get to 2 sacks, right? Is it just one? Like where does the ceiling really end for these guys in this matchup? So yeah, I'm excited to watch it, but also scared for Sam Howell to watch this.
Yeah, it's crazy, Sam Howell, man. I love him. I really liked him coming into the season, but man, the guy cannot help but just take like several sacks per game, and his offensive line has been decent. Like that's the thing. It's all him, really. It's kind of crazy. So, yeah. Speaking of Sam Howell's Commanders, anybody that you want to start with here for Washington?
I love the comeback of Chase Young, right? I think that's just such a great story this year. I know that there's a lot of people in circles I'm a part of and other things too that were, really, really out on Chase Young. And I think they had reason to believe that. But I mean, the talent has really finally shown through, stayed healthy, and he's just been Phenomenal. I mean, I guess I really don't know how else to describe it other than that. I'm sure you can dive into all the metrics that you have on him, but he is just, you love seeing that. So
Yeah, he's really been awesome, and he's playing a ton as well, which you love to see. 6 sacks now in 6 games, I believe it is. So yeah, I know this week is not like the best matchup going against the Eagles. The Eagles are what are they? The 27th worst matchup for pass rushers here as far as facing them in pass blocking grade. And then Jalen Hurts is decent at avoiding sacks as well. One of the better pressure to sack conversion rates in the league. But Young has played so well and he's played so much that I feel like, especially in leagues that you're starting 2 defensive ends, he's not really leaving lineups. He's potentially a top 12 edge especially if he's going against better matchups, just slightly better than this one even. So I have him as edge 18 this week. I even have Montez Sweat edge 19. But really, again, as long as it's not a difficult matchup like this, he's probably going to be on the brink of that top 12 edge range for me if he keeps this up.
yeah, and I mean, who maybe Hertz was coming up a little slow on some things, and I think he had a knee brace on even too. So maybe there's just a little bit more viability that way, right? So I love where you got him, and just love what he's done this year.
Yeah, he's been excellent. The one player I guess that I would be looking to avoid from this Commanders defensive line would be Daron Payne. So he's been excellent. I know he's been a top 12 edge for IDP, or top 12 defensive tackle for IDP. I have him as DT 14 this week. I don't know that he's really been that good this season. I kind of did warn about regression from him this offseason. I can't remember if it was actually you or Evan that we did the buy sell pod this off season, but I'm sure we talked about Daron Payne in that one as a sell. Because I've been talking about it all off season, right? He kind of overproduced last year. Obviously got that big payday as well, but so far this year, just 1 sack on the year, 56.1 pass rush grade, just 13 total pressures, despite playing 84% of the team's defensive snaps, right? So that part of it is concerning. That's underproducing for sure. And then the Eagles are tied for 5th in pass block grade again, and Jalen Hurts 16.1% pressure to sack conversion rate. So 24th worst matchup for a defensive lineman there. So Payne is the one that I think I'm worried about the most from this defensive line group. And we got to talk about your guy here at the safety position, because he's going against the best matchup for the safeties as far as tackles per game goes. Cameron Curl. I'll let you start this one off. How are you feeling about Cameron Curl this year? He's been awesome.
He really has, and I think he's really taken ownership of that defense, and I love what he's been able to produce for it. Obviously, his box utilization is through the roof. I think he's just trailing to people like Julian Blackmon, who really are just essentially linebackers for Gus Bradley. But no, Curl's been phenomenal. He's been able to make some of those splash plays for us in the backfield, a good handful of tackles for loss. I think he's even got 1 sack, maybe 2 already recorded this year. And the tackle floor is just awesome. I mean, and he's been doing this for us consistently. I think the thing I really am excited / nervous to see is where is he going to be next year, right? I believe he's on the last year of his contract. Is he going to be working with Jack Del Rio again? Hey, maybe send him to Indianapolis if Julian Blackmon doesn't come back. And I'd love to see him in a Gus Bradley defense. So, but no, I mean, yeah, he's just been exactly what I expected this year. I think coming into the year, I did the DB episode with Evan. To me, Curl is the top 3 safety defensive back in Dynasty, obviously, as well as this year. So yeah, he's delivering, and I hope to see him do it even more so this week in a favorable matchup that you've laid out here.
Yeah, it is the ideal matchup for safeties, and I think he should get paid by the Commanders. He's just been so valuable to them for what he provides for their defense. He essentially acts as another linebacker for them, plus defensive back. He really does everything, and he's been excellent for them. And he's been excellent for IDP. I know, he had the quiet game last game. I think he only had 3 total tackles or something like that, but these games happen all the time. And like a guy, 43% of his defensive snaps in the box. We love that. And then again, the positive matchup, the Eagles giving up 18.1 tackles to the safety position per game this season. So there is is all signs pointing to a great bounce back week here for Cameron Curl of the Washington Commanders. All right, let's go to the Cleveland Browns at the Seattle Seahawks. Jake, where should we start with this one?
I think we could start with the Cleveland Browns in a linebacker room that I normally tend to stay away from, but we might actually have some clarity there for the first time in a while. And Anthony Walker, I think I'm willing to give him the opportunity this week here in a matchup against Seattle. So I think he was 100% or 98% this last week. So very close there. It's something where that room is so inconsistent and so uncertain. But when you can get the certainty of 100% snaps from him, and he gets to play behind a defensive line that is producing the way it has, they finally have. I think that what gets lost in the Myles Garrett production this year is what they've been able to do in the middle of that defensive line as well. It's Dalvin Tomlinson and is it Rankins? Is that who was the other one? I'm blanking off the top of my head here, but I know they brought in 2 new defensive tackles this offseason, and they've really anchored the middle of that defensive front. And you look at that, and these linebackers can actually operate back there in a much more traditional sense. And I think Anthony Walker getting that level of utilization, that snap utilization, I'm willing to fire him up, even if it is a slightly not ideal matchup for him this week.
Yeah, this was really surprising, and the way that the Browns have been with their linebackers this year. This is the first time we actually had a 100% linebacker for this team all season, and Anthony Walker last week. And it was interesting because he had a concussion the game before, so he really didn't feel like he was even going to play, and we thought maybe Sione Takitaki would be the guy to play at least relevant snaps, and then Takitaki got injured, and Walker recovered from the concussion and was able to play. So with that, yeah, obviously, Walker playing 100%. We'll see if it sticks, because the Browns can be tricky with their linebackers, but JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, dropped significantly in his snaps, played less than 50% of the defensive snaps last game. So you don't love to see that for the other Browns linebackers, but good stuff for Anthony Walker for sure. I don't know that there's like a ton else on this Browns defense. I think Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris. I was just thinking about the defensive interior guys that you mentioned that they brought in there, and Maurice Hurst. They've all been solid next to Dalvin Tomlinson. But let's talk about Seattle a little bit. Seattle loses Uchenna Nwosu out for the year with a torn pec, I guess it was. So he'll be done now, and the next man up is Darrell Taylor, who should play a larger role going forward. He had 1.5 sacks this past week. They also signed Frank Clark for some reason. No, they brought him back. I'm sure he's going to continue to be as ineffective as he's always been. So hopefully Darrell Taylor continues to be somebody that they trust there ahead of Frank Clark, because Frank Clark has just been not good. It's not. This defensive line here for the Seahawks is you don't love it. You might like it for the matchup for tackles if they're able to rack up some tackles. Guys like Draymond Jones, maybe. The Browns are giving up the most tackles to the defensive line position, so there's that at least. But how about Jamal Adams? Let's talk about him. So another guy that was being written off this offseason, last offseason, really, he seems to kind of be back now, right? So this is back in a way that potentially has him in that kind of safety one range, because the usage in his first full game was as ideal as we would hope for any IDP safety, right? So 51.5% of his snaps in the box, 38% of his snaps in the slot, 4.5% of his snaps on the defensive line with 4 pass rush attempts, and just 4.5% of his snaps deep, which is, again, exactly what you want from a safety. You can argue if they even are a safety at that point, but we obviously love that for IDP. It is a slightly above average matchup for safety tackles, but top 10 matchup for linebackers and first for defensive line, which is where we're seeing Adams a little bit more of anyway. So this low key could be like a great matchup for him specifically again. So I like Jamal Adams as safety 12 this week. I'm feeling okay about putting him back in that range.
And I think you should be. And this was part of the reason that I wasn't as excited about Jordan Brooks coming into this year. Like that was, I think, maybe the lesser extent. A lot of it was the injury that he was coming back from. But they've never really rolled out like three true linebackers like this. And that's essentially what you have with Jamal Adams. I think you laid that out perfectly. And this last week, I think we saw Jordan Brooks dip kind of considerably. I think he was a sub 80% snap share, which I think is his lowest of the season. This really gives me a little bit of pause about Jordan Brooks. I think Seattle's always been a hyper efficient linebacker tackling team. I think, again, it's one of those things where we talked about like Jack Gibbons or Isaiah McDuffie, these guys who can really still thrive in an LB2 situation. Brooks maybe does do that still, but I really think we might want to consider lowering expectations a bit with him, the way Adams is being deployed. And we saw Julian Love roll out there like 90% still too, or something. So I think, and they invested in Love coming into this, and they declined Brooks's fifth year coming into this year as well. I'm in on Adams. I'm maybe, like I said, I'm starting to lower my expectation for Brooks here moving forward. Just a caution.
I think that's perfectly fair. Yeah, 69% of snaps last week for Jordan Brooks, and Julian Love was up over 90%. Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams up over 90%. Those guys were all three of them really full-time roles, so they really changed their defense a little bit here with Jamal Adams back in the fold. And the guys that suffered the most were Jordan Brooks and their nickel corner Trey Brown as well, right? So Trey Brown dropped to 30% of snaps. So if that's the way that they're going to deploy these guys, then yeah, I think you have to temper expectations for Jordan Brooks. I know he was still a very effective tackler last week, and this is still a strong matchup for linebacker tackles, but there's going to be other games where that 69 or 75% of snaps is really not going to do it for you. So you're going to be wanting to look elsewhere for potential starters at the linebacker position. Okay, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens and the Arizona Cardinals. All right, let's start with Kyle Hamilton, because I don't know how we can't at this point. We've talked about him so much, we may as well just keep on talking about him. Kyle Hamilton, it is a decent matchup for safeties. So I'll pull that up here. You'll see it is... my eyes. It's a top 10 matchup for safeties, tackles to the safety position this year. But the thing with Kyle Hamilton has been that when Marcus Williams is not in the lineup, he seems to play a lot more deep. He's not getting the ideal usage that we would hope for from Kyle Hamilton. And that showed last week, 55% deep last week, just 18% in the box. He has been forced back more while Williams is out, and the team doesn't appear to be overly trusting to leave Geno Stone on an island back there. So they're looking for a second guy to come back and play safety help. And that's been Kyle Hamilton. So it has hurt his production, just due to Marcus Williams not being 100% healthy. So Kyle Hamilton's he's out of the top 12 for me this week, just kind of knowing that, and knowing that Marcus Williams is probably going to miss this game as well, right? So if Williams is back, then maybe that changes things, but safety 14 is where I put him. But yeah, not looking great for Marcus Williams availability this week. Other things on Baltimore, Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen obviously have been amazing. We don't need to focus on them, but Odafe Owe did return. Finally, he had a 4-game absence and really looked like, I know he didn't have the sack numbers that some of the other guys on the Ravens did last week, but he did get one. And really looking at the pass rush metrics, he looked like the Ravens' best pass rusher last week, which was exactly what we want to see. So he's somebody that I think should be in consideration kind of going forward for fantasy managers. I think he has that ability to take, a leap this year as far as his development goes. And this is a decent matchup as well. Top 10 matchup for pass rushers going against a weaker pass blocking unit. So I think Odafe Owe, I think he'll get a potential snap share increase this week as well, which might bump guys like Kyle Van Noy down a little bit as well. And then on the Arizona side of things, the only thing for Arizona that stand well, other than Kayvon Wallace being released, which again no longer somebody that we can start. He's been great for IDP until last week, where he played 0% of snaps and then immediately got the boot because Budda Baker's back. But Kaiser White is coming off a quiet game, right? So people were kind of concerned with him. I think he had just 5 total tackles, but he also added 2 tackles for a loss. He had a pass breakup in there. He played 100% of snaps. He is my LB4 this week. I'm not worried about last week. These games happen all the time for linebackers, especially against non-optimal opponents, like the Seahawks were last week. So this week, White draws a matchup against the Ravens, who are the most optimal opponent for linebacker tackles. They're giving up 20.6 per game to opposing linebackers, which is a great boost for Kaiser White, who is the lone every down linebacker on a zone-heavy defense. In Arizona, Arizona is the 5th most zone-heavy team in the league. Josh Woods is there as well, but not an every down player. So that, to me, makes Kaiser White a top-tier start this week at LB4.
I'm with you. Yeah, the only thing I'd add is a little bit of a bump up for Zaven Collins the last couple of weeks. He's up to a 9% pass rush win rate, which is saying something because he was at 0 before that. So
that's true.
A few weeks ago. So I'm intrigued by this and following him a little more closely. He was someone I was very excited about, coming into the NFL a few years back, and this positional change didn't seem to be a good one. But maybe there's something here now. Maybe he's starting to establish himself, and maybe he can be relevant at some point here in the near future. We'll see. It's watching and waiting at this point, but it was just it was nice to see him kind of have a little bit of a better matchup this last week, and yeah.
Yeah, that was nice. I know he had the sack. I think it came as an unblocked sack as well, but he did play better like overall in that game, right? So that was at least a positive sign for him. But yeah, I want to see it a little bit more from Zaven Collins for sure, especially playing that new position. But definitely somebody to kind of keep an eye on because he's somebody that we've liked before. But let's move to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. Jake, where do you want to start with this game?
I mean, I think the big thing is the big name, right? Nick Bolton, he's out. Drew Tranquil, he's in. Coaching staff has talked well about him in the past when they brought him in. Nick Bolton's been out previously, and Drew Tranquil stepped in as the green dot and the 100% guy. So just that's what we expect there. Willie Gay will probably stay in his role completely. So don't try and get anything twisted there. Bolton out, Tranquil in.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, really, right? Because that's what we've seen already from Kansas City in games that Bolton's missed. Tranquil was 100% guy. When Bolton left last game, Tranquil was 100% guy. So you fire up Drew Tranquil as the top linebacker there for Kansas City. Willie Gay would be the second one. I think I have Drew Tranquil as LB 19 this week. So it's not like overly high or anything, but again, it's a more of a man-heavy defense. We'll see how much big plays he can add because he has made his money on that a little bit as well this year. But I don't mind him at all. He's definitely a startable linebacker for me this week. The only other thing I think for Kansas City, at least for me anyways, we'll see if you have anything else, was Charles Omenihu returned this past week from his suspension, played 51% of snaps, posted a 78.2 pass rush grade, added a sack in there as well. So I think there's potential that he maybe gets a little bit more playing time. I know Mike Dan has been effective, George Karlaftis as well, but I think we could see Omenihu kind of work his way up there as that free agent signing that they were looking to be their potential starter there for the Kansas City Chiefs off the edge.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that's the case. And yeah, he was someone I was excited about for this defense coming in to see what he could do. He's former Houston Texan. They drafted him, and he's shown some flashes. So in his time there, and yeah, I like what he's been able to do so far. So someone that definitely want to keep your eyes on now that he's back in the lineup. The big one for me that I want to talk about besides that is just Trent McDuffie. He was someone I was very high on throughout most of the offseason. He's been really solid, and he's delivered a solid tackle floor for us, really taking over kind of the lead role of that slot defender position for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's definitely not a 100% type of role for him. He's still moving around the field, and other people are getting opportunities in there, but he's clearly the primary slot defender. But we are seeing this translate for him. He's on pace for 89 tackles this season. So assuming that's, viable for your scoring formats, I think that's he's been really great for us. Just really missing that big play upside, pass rush opportunities and things that I think they're still finding ways to work Snead in more along the defensive line, because Snead just has been very successful as a pass rusher for them. So.
Yeah, both guys really have been great, and yeah, I like Trent McDuffie quite a bit. He's always in my top 10 to 12 cornerbacks on any given week, and yeah, should be a fine matchup for him as well. I'm pretty much leaving him in lineups every time just because of that position specifically that he plays, and he's able to kind of get involved in the action a little bit more often. So like that for McDuffie. Anything on the Denver Broncos IDPs that you want to talk about?
I think, Singleton, Jewel, it's been disappointing that it's flipped for me, at least personally. I was a big believer in Jewel. He was really the green dot, the 100% guy, but Singleton has that role now. But, looking at your numbers here, linebackers, obviously a clear advantageous thing. So they're both the primaries. I think you fire them both up. I think the big call out here, Kareem Jackson out, PJ Lock in. Kareem Jackson just can't stop trying to hurt people, it seems. I don't know. Okay. So PJ Lock's the name to pay attention to out there. Limited snaps, played actually quite a bit up in the box. I know they've generally tend to split the field defensively with their safeties there in Denver, it seems. They don't have like a strong and a free. It's each kind of just plays their half, but yeah, it's not PJ Lock's not someone I'm looking to put in, but with the suspension for several games, he's someone that you can look to get as a fill-in if you need it. And Zach Allen's kind of had a really nice performance here over the last 4 weeks. Really put up some great numbers and looks awesome. However, that might come to an end this week. I'm not a huge fan of defensive line matchups against the Chiefs. Mahomes is a wizard in the pocket, and they always generally put together a pretty strong offensive line as well. So,
yeah, I'm with you there. Absolutely, I'm not interested in the Denver defensive line this week, whether it's Jonathan Cooper or Nick Benito or Baron Browning. Zach Allen, I have him as DT24, so I really pushed him down this week. But he's been good. Cooper's been good as well, obviously, but not overly interested in these guys going against Mahomes. No one avoids sacks better than Patrick Mahomes. 7.2% pressure to sack conversion rate, even behind an average O-line. They don't give up a lot of tackles to the defensive line position either. None of these guys are really like amazing pass rushers enough to the point where you have to put them in and, ignore the matchup kind of thing. But Baron Browning, he could be kind of interesting. He made his season debut this past week. He didn't do much in the box score, but possible that he sees more work kind of going forward. He did have a 90.8 pass rush grade in that game, which included 4 pressures on just 17 pass rush attempts. So that was really encouraging to see for Baron Browning, if he can potentially kind of move up the depth chart there a little bit. But yeah, other than that, like you said, great matchup for Alex Singleton and Josey Jewell, firing those guys up. Singleton ahead for sure. But yeah, not a whole lot else there for the Denver Broncos. Nope. So let's move to the Cincinnati Bengals at the San Francisco 49ers. So let's start with the safeties here for Cincinnati. These guys have been pretty interesting just considering how well they've performed this season, or at least how well Dax Hill specifically has performed this season. He's my safety 5 this week. He's really been solid. He's got a couple of interceptions this season, 1.5 sacks, 46 total tackles. And the 49ers are the 3rd best matchup for the safeties this season as far as tackles go. So I like that for Dax Hill. Even though he has played 61% of his snaps deep, he's still found ways to produce. And in positive matchups like this, I think that could help him. Nick Scott, also another option here. We saw his snaps dip for 1 week, but then he got back up to the full-time role again last week. So not much concern there for Nick Scott. And he's played just 37% of his snaps deep. So he's lining up a little bit of everywhere. 49ers might not have Brock Purdy this week, so we'll see what that kind of creates as far as offense goes. They may be starting Sam Darnold, so that'll be interesting to see. But other than that, for the Bengals, there's not a whole lot else. I mean, Sam Hubbard, it's a really good matchup for defensive line tackles. The 49ers are giving up the 5th most tackles to the defensive line position, and Sam Hubbard is a top 5 edge in tackles at the position. So if you're in a tackle heavy league, especially ones that reward defensive linemen a little bit more than linebackers, Sam Hubbard would be a potential top tier play this week as well.
I think you hit them all there.
Yeah, it feels like it, right? Because I mean, we know what their linebackers are with Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt at this point. We know what that deployment is. If you're starting them, you're really kind of continuing to start them in basically an average matchup here, neutral matchup against the 49ers. So let's talk about those 49ers. And I guess the main thing, really, Nick Bosa, just 2.5 sacks on the year, but 91.7 pass rush grade is second best among edge defenders. Also 35 total pressures. He's got a 23% win rate. All these are top 5 numbers really for the position. So I know that, people may be frustrated a little bit, but this happens all the time with defensive linemen. You have to be, patient with these guys, and you can't really drop them or move on from them or bench them or anything like that, because the pass rush metrics are all there for them. And especially for a guy like Nick Bosa, who's now going against Joe Burrow, who owns a top 10 pressure to sack conversion rate in the league, this is a positive matchup for him to potentially do some damage here. So you can't leave Nick Bosa out of lineups. He's edge 3 for me this week. Anybody else? Yeah, anybody else on San Francisco that you want to touch on?
I mean, the biggest one that I actually talked about it a few weeks ago in our preview pod is Talanoa Hufanga, right? I mean, he's been someone that obviously had a heck of a year last year, really made a name for himself, came in, a lot of people had him touted quite highly this year. And I ended up with a few shares of him kind of out of with some of my own hesitation, and I'm wishing I wouldn't have, bought into some of those shares at this point. Now he's really, they're deploying him almost exclusively as a deep safety outside of, a few opportunities each game, to play as a pass rusher or kind of play along the line there. And that's really just killed, I think, his ability to make plays. And I don't know if that's the Steve Wilkes defense coming in here now or whatever it is, but if you haven't gotten or haven't moved on from your Hufanga shares, you really should be trying to at this point, just based on namesake and what people thought of him from last year.
Yeah, it's super flashy player. I think we talked about this when Jace was on, I think it was. And we talked about, his usage as well there. I have him as safety 33 this week. Like, he's not anywhere by any means, a must start player. I know he has the flashy plays and everything like that, but really not, an elite producer by any means. So he's somebody that, if you can sell based on, name value, or to a 49ers fan, or to somebody that, only watches the primetime games and sees Hufanga and thinks of him as like a Troy Polamalu comp, then he would definitely be somebody that I'd be looking to sell at this point.
Yep.
All right. Let's move to the Chicago Bears at the Los Angeles Chargers. Sunday night football this is. So Jake, John, all of us Jays. Jake, where do you want to start with this Sunday night football matchup?
I mean, let's kick it off with the Chicago Bears. It's funny you talked about, sometimes you just got to take some of the bad with the good, right? And that's TJ Edwards. He showed us he is actually human. I think about 2-3 tackles this last week. So it happens, and even in what is looking like literally the worst possible matchup for those Bears linebackers. I'm still comfortable firing up TJ Edwards. The guy has shown that he can be efficient in whatever role he's put in. If he's the primary, if he's kind of that weak side linebacker, off ball linebacker, number 2. So I'm thinking he's going to find ways to make plays and still be relevant. Maybe again, lower those expectations, kind of like we've been talking about, but you're still firing up TJ Edwards, even after a very tough week here last week.
Yeah. I'm not concerned about TJ Edwards. If he has a down week, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of what's wrong with TJ Edwards questions, but this is just not a great matchup for him, right? So he's not somebody that you're getting rid of or moving on from. You just hold him and he's going to be productive. Yeah, Chicago, they're again, they're IDPs. We always have like nothing much to talk about with Chicago because their defensive line is so poor. But it is, at least for their secondary, Jaquan Brisker's been solid. But
Yes.
let's talk about corners here because the Los Angeles Chargers are the fourth best matchup for cornerbacks as far as tackles go. And somebody that's somewhat interesting to me this week is Tyreek Stevenson of the Chicago Bears. I think he could potentially be a decent streaming option going against Los Angeles, who's giving up 15.5 tackles to the cornerback position per game. And Stevenson has been really picked on by opposing offenses this season. He's ranked inside the top 5 most targeted corners on the year with 48, and that includes 17 total targets thrown his way just last week alone, which was the most targets faced by any player in one game this season. So I think Tyreek Stevenson is going to potentially get picked on again. See a lot of work, a lot of thrown his way with Justin Herbert at quarterback. We'll see if Kyler Gordon gets back to a full workload as well, because he's somebody that I like a lot for IDP, and I would be trusting him as well because his workload has increased steadily since he's been back in the lineup as well.
Yep. Yeah. More in that starter level role last week with 75% snaps, 7 tackles, quarterback hit. So yeah, I'm excited to see hopefully Kyler Gordon really break out this week, potentially in a very favorable matchup.
Yeah. He's somebody that I've had rostered a lot this year, and I'm just going to plug him into lineups this week because I do like the matchup. But Tyreek Stevenson, for those that need maybe a streaming option, he could be solid there as well. Anybody on the Chargers that you want to talk about in this game?
For me, really, I think it's Tuiapulotu. I love what he's been able to do so far this year. Even with Bosa in the lineup too last week, and Bosa playing one of his highest snap rates of the year, he's still found a way to be out there for a good amount of snaps. And this week, you look at the Bears offensive line has not been necessarily really great, and Justin Fields, someone who has a long time to throw and likes to hold on to the ball, has kind of maybe contributed to that. But even in the limited time that Tyler Bagent has been out there, 47 dropbacks, 15 times he's been pressured. So, I mean, 1 out of every 3 dropbacks leading to a pressure. I think this is something where, all the Chargers pass rushers, especially the primary ones, Mac, Bosa, and Tuli, are ones that you can definitely be excited to play this week.
Yeah, I love that call. That's great. And yeah, I really don't have much to add there. Joey Bosa, yeah, it was nice to see him cross that 50% snap threshold last week. So I would be feeling okay with them going against Tyler Bagent this week. I should note that for those watching on YouTube, the pressure to sack conversion rate on the screen is for Justin Fields, not for Tyler Bagent. I know Justin Fields, I think, is doubtful this week. So Bagent's pressure to sack conversion rate is 13.3% so far this year, but that's just unlimited snaps. I think we could see that kind of go up here against the Chargers. All right, Monday Night Football. It is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Detroit Lions. Jake, I feel like we have to talk about Max Crosby, just because I was gonna say the Detroit Lions player, but I am going to go with Max Crosby in honor of the jersey behind me, just to kind of give a quick update on his snap streak. Really is the main thing. I'm really saving the best for last. I'm making people wait on the Detroit Lions player, just like Dan Campbell has made us wait. So Max Crosby had his streak of 3 straight games without missing a defensive snap broken last week. He still played like 98% of snaps, but he had played 233 consecutive defensive snaps, which was the most for a defensive lineman since 2016. So really ridiculous stuff there from Max Crosby. I just wanted to point that out because we love him so much on this show, and he is still a top elite edge for me this week. But let's finish up talking about some of the Raiders options here. Divine Diablo was injured last week. We'll see if he ends up playing or not. It doesn't look likely that he's going to play. So Luke Masterson among the Las Vegas linebackers would be the next man up. Not a full-time role for Masterson. he would probably be playing in that 70 to 80% of range. But it is a good matchup for linebackers. The Lions are fifth in tackles yielded to the linebacker position on a per game basis this year, which is a positive note for Robert Spillane and for Luke Masterson or Divine Diablo, whichever one ends up playing in this game next to Spillane. So anything else for the Raiders here, Jake, before we move on to the lovely Detroit Lions?
Nope. Let's talk about those Lions.
All right, let's do it. Jack Campbell finally moves up the depth chart in a meaningful way. For IDP, at least, playing a season high 90% of Detroit's defensive snaps this past week. He surpassed Derek Barnes on the depth chart. It really didn't look likely that it was going to happen anytime soon, and it came out of nowhere. Dan Campbell makes the move. Of course, it comes in a game where they get blown out, so that makes me scared that Dan Campbell's going to feel like it wasn't worth the move and he's going to go back to it. So how are you feeling about Jack Campbell and 90% of snaps, Jake, and are you trusting him?
I want to trust him so bad, but you are spot on. But getting to see it regardless made me excited. My call has always been, or my belief has always been, that once we got through the bye week, that is when Jack Campbell was going to truly be unleashed. It's just what we've tended to see in the past for rookies, offense or defense. It doesn't matter. Teams always like that extra week to try and implement these newer personnel into these roles. But so seeing that ahead of this time and that there, I mean, if you really want to wait, because this is a less than ideal matchup for linebackers, and again, we should have full complement of our players with no buys. Totally comfortable with that. But I really am hoping and believing that Jack Campbell's season is upon us here moving forward. So
yeah, it certainly feels that way, and I'm with you. I'm fine on waiting one more week. I mean, we've waited this long, right? And like you said, not an ideal matchup. We want to make sure that it sticks as well, because again, coming off the big loss, and we'll see what the usage is for Campbell, because it was kind of interesting. He played 50% of his defensive snaps on the edge this past week, right? So I think that really hurt his tackle efficiency, right? So it's never a good thing to be playing right on the edge as a linebacker for tackle efficiency. So it was nice. Obviously, the overall workload was ideal at 90%, but if he's going to be playing on the edge like that, I don't love that for his potential for production. But we just hope that, again, it starts with the 90% snap share, and then we can adjust from there. So really interested to see how this one kind of works out on Monday Night Football. I'll be sure to get those Lions snap share breakdown out there as soon as that game is finished for people to find out exactly what it looked like for the Lions. But anything else for Detroit or anything from Monday Night Football for this one for you?
No, I think another one we'll probably watch Brian Branch again. He came back from his injury, played 50%. It's one where I think where the Lions are in their season, I would not be playing Brian Branch, because I think, again, they're probably going to ease him in, especially with a bye week next week where, and I know coaches generally don't think this way, but this should be a matchup that the Lions should be able to handle overall with the quality of their roster they have, even without a Brian Branch full time. So that would be one where I'd probably limit expectations, or again be looking for other options for that matchup. But hopefully post bye we get back into a full complement of Brian Branch out there as a playmaker.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. 50% of snaps for Brian Branch last week, and it was against the Ravens, and the Ravens were like well below average in using 11 personnel as well. So maybe not as much need for a nickel corner in that game. So I do kind of want to monitor that and see if that becomes like a matchup dependent usage for Brian Branch. If they're, teams that maybe deploy more 11 personnel if he's getting a higher snap share, and then vice versa as well. So I do want to see that too. But like you said, also was coming off the injury. So there's a number of factors to kind of consider there. And yeah, maybe somebody that we, again, wait and see on before we plug him into IDP lineups this week. All right, that is going to do it, Jake. We kept it under 2 hours as well with all 16 games. That's impressive, Jake. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show here and helping me break it all down, man. This means a lot, and I appreciate you and all of your insights. So thank you very, very much.
Likewise, John. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and I'm impressed we kept it under 2. So that's a
Amazing.
little feather in our cap for this week, at least.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it helps to have like most of our situations sorted out and we kind of know what to expect from each team. So hopefully for the people that have been listening since week 1, you've got a handle on things, and we were going to focus more on these matchup based plays now going forward, as opposed to trying to sort out the usage every week. So that should help keep things a little bit tighter as well, especially as we get some bye weeks. So again, thank you very much to Jake. Thank you to everybody for listening. Jake, before you go, please remind everybody where they can find you and your work.
Absolutely. The bulk of my work is with the IDPshow.com as well as Reality Sports Online. Put out weekly start sit articles for Reality Sports as well as with the IDP Show. Do the preview pod for the IDP Show, so you can check that out every week. And then, just with the IDP After Show, we put together all kinds of different content stuff, off season, in season, you name it. So, come check me out. Come check out a lot of my cohorts doing a lot of great stuff in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. We love the IDP show over here. We always get you guys on, and we've got a lot of you, and I think we got Bobby next week as well. So we got the whole family basically rounded up over these first 9 weeks of the season or so. So that's been very fun. Definitely go check out Jake and his work though over at theidpshow.com and Reality Sports Online as well, and at Late Round DB on the Twitter. So as for me, my work can be found on PFF.com. As you all know, we got the IDP fantasy report up there, which will have all the snap shares, utilization, and waiver wire targets for IDP. We'll have my IDP rankings up in article form up by Thursday morning. We'll also have the wide receiver man zone coverage report up Thursday morning. O-line, D-line matchups to target and avoid on Friday morning. Typically, Kate and I do the week 8 offense preview pod. Kate is on jury duty this week, so she is unavailable. Nate is unavailable, so we are skipping the week 8 offensive preview because it is a massive one and I cannot do it by myself. So unfortunately, we won't be able to do that, but we have a ton of content up on pff.com that people can check out to get you ready for week 8. So be sure to do that. Good luck in week 8, and until next time, peace out.